Hey, good women and men of YouTube. I'm going to show you an ORM for PHP that's possibly one of the nicest I've seen to date. It's called Red Bean PHP, and you can go ahead and download it and you'll get a tar GZ file. And once you finally extract it, you'll just have one file called rb.php. It's a little smaller than 300 kilobytes. And what I did in my local host is I just created a Red Bean folder and an index file. And I'm going to show you how to use it with CRUD operations, and it's extremely easy. First thing you do is require RB or redbeans.php, and setting it up is just like setting up a MySQL connection with PDO, or you could use SQLite or whatever you prefer, and then your login and password. So let's get started. The first thing is, this thing works with beans. Alright, so let's create a bean, and I'll say book. Well, that's in the tutorial. Let's make it a little more interesting. I'll say user equals r dispense user. And what we do is, this is an ORM, an object relational mapper, so we're actually going to map properties to the object. So I'll say user login equals Jesse, user password equals SHA1fish, user email equals test@test.com. And lastly, I'll just do user money equals 100, and you'll see why I put that there, because we're going to go back to it. So to save this, I'll say Red Beans store user, and this will actually create the table. I already have my database RB here created, so here it is right here. And what I'll do is I'll refresh the page. I'll go back to my database, and now I have a user table. And look at that, it created an auto incrementing ID and all this other junk in there. Extremely easy to use this. We can also give this an ID and echo out the ID of what's created. So refresh, there's the ID. So that's how you create, okay? And I will say this, when you actually use this for a live thing, you're going to want to run Red Beans freeze to true, and this will prevent new rows and tables from being created dynamically. You'll want that because it'll just use a lot more power to keep checking it and creating it if they don't exist. But for development purposes, you don't need it at all. So that's how we create. So create, let's do an update. So an update, what we do is rload, and we just type in our table name, and we're just working with one table now, so I'll say user, and I have an ID of 1, I know, because we already created one, and I need to give this a variable. I'll just give it the variable u, just so it looks a little different from this guy up here. So this is loading an existing guy. I'll say u login equals dogface, and then I'll say r store u. Refresh, and I'll go here, and ID of 1 is now dogface. Extremely easy to do updates. This just grabs it based on the ID. Okay, let's do a delete. Whoops. I'll say u equals r load user 1 once again, and I'll say r trash of u. So we should no longer have an ID of 1 after I refresh it. So it's here, right here, ID of 1. Now I'll refresh the page, and there it is, it deleted it. Easy peasy. I mean, this is extremely nice. Very good job to the author of this. So we also need a lot of things like finding and all that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this crap, and we're going to do some finding. I'll say user equals Red Beans find all users, and whoops, I'll refresh, and it found something, but I got to print it out. Let me echo out a pre right up here so it's easier to read, and boom, we get an array of all these Red Bean objects. So with all these Red Bean objects, if we actually knew what we wanted to load, we could actually grab it out of this array. We could say red beans load of the user table, user 3 ID, and I'll call this blah just for an example. Let's see if that works for us. Refresh, and we have this object here, and what we can do is blah login equals pigpen and our store of blah. Okay, so we search for something, we just created our own little section of it that we want to update, and let's see if we get a blah in here, or sorry, pigpen, and there's pigpen. And let's go back to this here. You see how I have money here? I'll change this to .43, and you can't store an integer or a float inside of a tiny int field, so what's red bean do? It takes care of it for us. Refresh, oops, and it makes it a double, and here it is, 100.43. It's a pretty smart system, man. We're going to do a couple of fetches because you always want to fetch stuff, so I'll say r get all, and we can use plain MySQL queries, so I'll say select all from user. I'll just call this data and print out of data. Refresh, and look at all that crap. Sweet. We can do get row. Now this is in their documentation, and it's pretty much almost exactly what I'm going over, but you might like to see someone do it because you actually realize, hey, this is kind of cool. You can also you can bind values too, where ID equals question, and I'll say, since it's a question mark, I'll say 3, and it'll probably just give me like a value I've already done. So 3, I actually don't have a, oh, there it is, pigpen. Refresh, and here's pigpen. Ridiculously easy. You can also bind values, so I could do :ID and pass an associative array, and we should get the same thing. Whoops, and there it is once again. So oh yeah, I will say that this little array thing here I'm doing, this is in PHP 5.4. You might have to type it out like this if you don't have the latest and greatest. And that's pretty much it for the basics. You can also create your own models with something they have called Fuse, but for very easy CRUD operations, this is probably the #1 best ORM I've seen, pretty much due to its simplicity and how easy it is to use. Oh, lastly, I'll say you can also do r-exec, so if you wanted to delete from user, where user, or sorry, ID equals that, I'll just say 3. Boom, refresh, and there's no more number 3. Super easy to use, and I hope you guys think it's cool. Bye.